We are continuing our series of tutorials where we're walking through, basically walking our way up to a Python certification. This episode, we're continuing our exploration of functions and how they work within Python. We started with just some basics, defining them and either returning, if we go back to that one, actually, let me flip that back up, either returning a value like that or doing a yield. These are going to become important to some extent using those concepts as we move forward and we talk about parameters. So today, let's start with, if you remember, we had, for example, an add, where if you gave it an A and a B, if I just did print add 3, 4, I need to do that, and it's got to be a string. And if I do that, then it's going to just print that out. So there you go. So if I do 3 and 4, that's great. Now with this, it doesn't really matter, whether we do 3 and 4 or if we do 4 and 3. However, let's say we do, let's change this to address. And now we're going to have city, state, and zip. And then what we want to do is, let's just say are at, and then we're going to do this. We're just going to do city, and this is probably not the best way to do it because I should have used my little, actually let's do this. Let's see, what was that, comma, city, state, and then zip. Format, and then we'll do city, state, zip. And then return val. Actually, let's just print it. Well, we'll return it for now. Okay, so we're going to return that, and then we're going to do print, and I'm going to do print address. How do I call that with my city, state, and zip? So zip code's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. State will be, let's say, pick Illinois, and city will be somewhere. So now if we run this one, so you're at somewhere, Illinois, there's your zip code. But now what if I switch those? Then it's not going to look like you are at, and it just doesn't look right because you don't really know what is what necessarily. Now this you could probably figure it out because, let's face it, those are very different. But if you didn't understand what zip codes were, or if you had city and state names that seemed familiar, like let's say New York could be a city, could be a state, then it could confuse things. So what we can do here is we can take this and we can say, using the names that are up there, so we could say zip equals, so where's the city equals, and state equals. So if we do that, now we're back to the proper one. So we don't have to keep the order of parameters in general, but that's something we're going to look at right here. Is now what I can do. Let's create a new one. So let's do hello. And let's do a name and a time. And all this is going to do is just going to say hello to somebody. It is, and then there's going to be some time. And let's just do that format. I'll take those two. Note that format we talked about back in one of the string, I think one of the operators, or maybe it was in strings, anywheres, wherever it was, I guess it probably was strings, can be a very great way to quickly put stuff together. So here, we're going to do name and time. And if I call hello, and it's going to be Bob, and let's say morning. So that's going to work fine. So if I do that, hello Bob is morning. But let's say that I don't necessarily always need that. So I can just default, it is, let's say, a generic time of the day. Boy, that was a lot of. So now, this goes back to somewhat, as we get in positional, now I can do the same thing. And I don't have to call, because I have this default value. I can call that, and we see here that it just picks up whatever my default is. And I could do this with numbers, so I could do add. If I do like add 2, and let's just say b equals 2. So here, I could come in and I could just make it 3. Can I get those balanced right? There we go. And if I get that, then it's just going to add to that. So I could actually call that multiple times. And I'm going to see it gets to, I'm sorry, because it's not adding to the prior one. My mistake. So there we've got a default, and we could actually do, let's say with this address, let's just call it location. I'll change this around a little bit, and I want to do this. So now let's do location. And let's say I start with a zip code. I need at least a zip code. And state would be, let's say, not entered. And city equals not entered. So now let's go back to my little zip code. So let's do a couple of these. So the first one we're going to do is just that. And we know this one's going to work because we've just seen it. Well, okay, we don't totally know it. And now let's do, so for city, that's going to be nowhere. It's a city. So let's look at those two. And then let's see what happens if we do the state. I'll make it Ohio this time. Now notice here, you're at not entered. So city, state, zip. Here, nowhere comes in as city, state, zip, and state wasn't entered. But notice that because of the ordering, it's going to sit here and say, hey, this doesn't work. It assumes, because we haven't said anything, that the state is that the city is a value and not the state. It does. We're back to assuming an order. Now let's look at this. So now, if we name it though, then we can see where city was blank, and so we can use named and default values combined to have default values throughout our definition. So I could actually take this, and if I changed that to my, let's go there. So if I change that, then I could actually call, so now I've got a default for every value, and if I call address, we'll see that up here. Well, let's just see. Let's just do, so I can make sure we see it. So empty values example, and then we're going to see here, somewhere Illinois 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I could just as easily say state equals, so let me change that. Oh. And now we're going to see here, I just changed the state, but I picked up the other default values. So we can default and use names to actually have a pretty long list of values and work with those. Another one we can do is we can have a series. So now I can do, let's see, Just going to call it sum. And it's going to be values. And we put a star on this. Oh, actually, I think it's this way. My mistake. And then let's see, for item and values. Let's see. Let's do result equals 0. Result equals result plus item. Return result. And then we can do print string sum. And so we can do like a whole bunch of values. And we're going to see here that it adds those up as it walks through those and deals with them. Now here, this is much like when we did the generator before. So like actually look at this. Let's see what it says, what it does when I actually print out values. You should see that, well, there it doesn't show it as a generator, but it does show it as a, so it's just an array. And it's going to walk through those values, or you can walk through those values and do what you need to do with them. Now, another thing you can do is recursion. Let's see, how do I want to, well, actually, so I could take this same thing and I can do sum 2. And this goes back, we're doing returns right now. But we could do something like that where we can also use the yield. And I can actually see it as I let's see, yield result equals that. And I'm just going to do that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see each of the, I'm going to see it actually build up. Oh, except for now I've got to do, I got to change this a little bit because now I've got to do result here equals sum, no, one of those. And then for x in result print x. So now we're going to see this, so I can see, so first it comes through and it does 1, then it does 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2 plus 3, 1 plus 2, so you can see that build out. So we can use yield just as easily. Another thing we can do is we can do recursion. So the famous one for that would be factorial. I'll have to define it. Factorial, and it's going to take a value of x. And then it's going to say, and factorial means, so like well, I'll say 3 factorial is actually 3 times 2 times 1. So it's, and 4 factorial would be 4 times 2 times 1. So that's what we're going to generate. So for factorial, what we want to do is, if you notice that 4 is actually the same as 4 times 3 factorial. And so 3 is the same as 2 times factorial. So what we want to do is we're going to return x times x, factorial of x minus 1. And I should spell return right. And then if I do print string, let's do 5 factorial 5. Oops, what did I forget to do? And let's see, so I need to do if, I'd have to have this return value. So let's say if x equals 1, return 1, else return that. So my mistake. So then I'm going to return that. Let's see how that looks. Oops. There we go. So at each point here, Yeah, I don't think I'm going to add a print to it. So you can see here at there's our thing. There's our final value. Now we could also do, at each part of these, we could do a yield, and we can see that again. So result equals that, and for x and that print. Okay, so we're going to do this. Oh, sorry. Oh, the problem with the yield here is that what we need to do is it needs to actually be, we have to convert that to an int. So this is going to be int x, because now we're screwing around with it a little bit. So it's going to change the type. Oh, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, that's not going to work. If we do a yield here, then yield actually generates, because it sends back a generator, it's not going to build it right. So I'd have to actually peel it off of the generator. So my mistake. But as you can see, we can do a recursive call, and we can just keep calling this, and we could have two of them. So we could have, if we wanted, we could have like a define, we could have A that does something, and it calls B. And we could have a B that calls A to some extent. And we can do, well, let's show you that real quick. Got a minute? So now if I call A, it's going to blow up, because we get a maximum recursion depth, because they just keep going back and forth. And we'll see that, yeah, because it just shows us, it just blew out the stack. So I can do this, or I could have a counter or something like that. And of course, this is not a very useful example, but you can also have things call each other. So I think that's a good point for here. We've gone through a good deal of stuff, particularly focused on our parameters. And note that there's many ways that you can send parameters around, just as you can either send a single result or a generator of results that comes back. That'll do it for today. So as always, go out there, have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.